Recording stopped.
So we'll get started without her. All right.
So it'll be over by then.
I will call to order the Planning Commission meeting for Monday, September 12th, 2022. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
Recording in progress.
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we've got the agenda in front of us. Are there any changes or additions? No? I guess it.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept.
So we've got a motion to approve the agenda. I will second the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Agenda's approved. And then we have the minutes from the meeting of August 8th, 2022.
So moved.
Were there any changes or corrections that anybody had?
The only note I have is just on the public hearing, we just have to add the name of one of the residents that spoke. So it's highlighted in there. We just didn't get that in there.
I saw that, okay.
I can make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 5th
Second.
meeting.
We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. New business in front of us. We've got the trail and sidewalk priorities.
All right, good evening, Planning Commission. So you may recall the Planning Commission had looked at the Master Transportation Plan back in March and then recommended making a couple minor amendments to that plan. Specifically, we added a couple projects in there and then also added some priority, high priority and medium priority projects for sidewalk and trail gaps in our community. So Planning Commission, Park Board, and Council ended up adopting that Master Transportation Plan. So what we're looking for this evening is just a follow-up. So we have some projects that are depicted within that plan and highlighted in the memo in your packet. And what we're looking for is some kind of chronological type of list for the projects that we have highlighted. So I'd like to go through some of these projects just to provide a little bit more background into some of the constraints and challenges associated with them. So the first one that you'll see is Baker Street. So the Baker Street connection would go from 12th to 18th and then actually all the way over to Highway 75. So right now, this street is traditionally a east-west connector within the community. It's a highly traveled area of the community just from a roadway transportation standpoint. So right now, the current trail terminates, right over here. And we would just be continuing that all the way over. That would probably likely be, depending on how much the costs are estimated for that, a phase 1 or phase 2 type of project. The next one that we have depicted, and please stop me if you have questions as we are kind of going.
Are you looking at an on-road, or a sidewalk or an off-road trail there, or what do you?
Sidewalk.
Sidewalk?
Yep. So the next area is the, some of you may recall the Planning Commission, I think, was involved in Highway 75 crossing study that was completed back in like 2018, I believe. And one of the intersections is right here. So we have right by the Quick Trip. So Quick Trip is right here, Neighbors Bar and Grill, Highway 75. This area to the south here on 20th Avenue has been built up significantly since that crossing study was completed. We have apartments down here, the Vista Apartments, and there may be some more development occurring over here as well in the near future. So one of the challenges is when the trail went in right here. It terminated right here. So what folks will do is still continue across here, mostly to connect on over to the Wobegon Trail on this side. So we've heard from multiple residents regarding just creating a trail right here to connect directly to the Wobegon Trail. Of course, this Highway 75 is within the county jurisdiction, so we'd have to work with the county on that and ensure that where we line up our trails and connections and that makes sense for both parties.
And there's a traffic signal at that intersection, so the crossing would be at the signal.
Correct. Yep. The third project depicted in your memo here is Northland Drive, so we'll move over to the west. So we have the Wobegon Trail right here, Highway 75. Current trail or sidewalk terminates about right over here, I believe. And part of this project, so this street, you'll see here, and probably familiar with it, we don't have curb and gutter on this street, so it's not a traditional city standard street, still in a rural condition. So this likely connection, this trail would come down here, connect to Highway 75, which is another signalized intersection, and then also provide that direct connection to the Wobegon Trail. But it'd likely be done as part of like a street reconstruction type of project versus a standalone trail or sidewalk improvement. As you're familiar to, these always happen during the meetings. So the Elm Street connection right here will occur in likely 2024. We've been having some conversations with these property owners over here. So this street reconstruction could coincide with that Elm Street connection. We have stormwater improvements that we have to make as well in this area. So moving on, the next area that's depicted in your memo are just various infill projects, specifically within the downtown area. Right now, for instance, along College Avenue, church parking lot over here, we have a gap on one side of the road for a sidewalk, so people are usually transversing through the parking lot here or crossing over. We have multiple crosswalks. We also, going on the other side of Highway 75, have a gap that's identified right here. Here's the Wobegon Trail, comes off here. Folks got to cross over, come down on the west side. Having a trail or sidewalk on the east side has been identified. And then we also have gaps like on 2nd Avenue Northwest on one side of the road where we don't have a sidewalk and a trail connection. So that project is kind of multiple projects, just trying to fill some infill gaps and connections in the downtown. The next area is out south of the community. So our future park here, what's called East Park, we've recently received funding for, and construction will likely happen will happen in 2023. So we don't have any connection right now from Jade Road going down the south to that park area. So that was identified as a medium priority when we did our transportation plan update, and that was mostly due to the unknown of funding and when improvements would happen at East Park. And then the last two depictions within your memo here, going back to Baker Street. So we have a gap that is on Minnesota Street up here, which would connect all the way down to 20th Avenue Southeast. What's challenging about this connection and corridor is there's not a lot of right-of-way, and there's also limitations on right-of-way. The county actually owns most of this, if not all of this, so we'd have to work with them again on that. And then that Baker Street connection, kind of a second phase or maybe even third phase would be connecting it from here over here once this full connection is made. So that's what we have depicted and what's in the packets and memo. So really what staff is looking for is kind of just recommendation on at least the top 2, maybe 3 projects from that list. And then what we'll do with that is we'll share that with the council at a workshop, and then also the park board, and hopefully try to get a consensus so staff can go and target some grants to help complete these connections. Questions?
The Highway 75 crossing, is that the pedestrian bridge format that has been discussed, or is that a different?
No, so the
Type of-
so a pedestrian bridge would likely occur, if it were to occur, closer to the downtown area at one of the intersections closer, on the west side here. This one would just be a at-grade crossing, and then just, creation of a trail
Okay.
on this side and that side.
I don't think that Highway 75 crossing on 20th is a priority. You know, there's not a lot of pedestrian,
Mhm.
that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree that the more common desire to get from the Wobegon Trail, south into town would more likely happen closer to Kays and downtown.
Right, yeah,
To the
right
west.
now it's Casey's
Yeah,
in that area.
yeah.
I mean,
That's-
after the study, that's where it came down to.
So to your point, the First Street Northland might get used a little more because it's more western,
Mhm.
if that's the goal, is providing pedestrian access from the trail southward.
And that street's ready for, you know, reconstruct or overlay in 2024, if I remember right, so that would coincide with the Elm Street.
And I think having a Highway 75 crossing in the top priorities would be a good idea, since that is something that's been up for discussion for many years.
Mhm.
But I would agree that First Street to Highway 75, because of its proximity to, A, the residents in Northland Heights, and B, closer to the downtown area, would make more sense than the 20th Avenue crossing. And since that Elm Street and those improvements are looking at happening, and the
Yeah.
need for the improvements there, I think that one probably makes sense to put towards the top of the list.
I'm fine with that.
Which one was that? I didn't catch
The
that.
Northland Drive, First Street to Highway 75,
Okay.
just because of the changes coming in there and, or the, you know, the necessary improvements going on there with, and then the Elm Street project as well.
The Baker Street project, is that 3 feet of sidewalk on both sides, or is that a 6-foot sidewalk?
It would just be a 6-foot sidewalk on likely the south side of Baker Street.
I think the number one priority would be Northland Drive, and, number 2 would be the Baker Street, and that would coincide with the YMCA being built probably in 2025, I would, you know, guess. You know, so you could combine all that together on one project.
I would agree those two, and then I think if we wanted to throw a third one on there, because there is funding for the East Park
Mhm.
improvements, I think throwing that County Road 121, Jade Road to East Park in there as probably priority number 3, just from the likelihood of it happening, I think
Yeah,
would
agree
make
with that.
sense, so I think those would be 3 good projects to prioritize.
I do see a lot of people using the bike path that goes from the Township Hall down to Kennedy. You see a
Mhm.
lot of people using that, and I think a lot of people would continue onto the river if the extension was there, so
Yeah,
I think that would actually see quite a bit of use.
I don't know if we need a sidewalk there versus a trail.
Yeah, I don't know if it makes a huge.
We do a trail likely,
Yeah.
yeah, yep, just to stay consistent in that, yeah.
Less expensive and less.
Oh, yeah, I don't think it matters whether it's
Yeah.
sidewalk or trail, and the trail's already there, so extending it would make sense.
Mhm.
I have just a side note on the maintenance of the trail or of the road, the sidewalk. Is that something that we put in the budget for every so many years? Cause I had never, it's probably because of the deluge of rain we had, but I've never seen the asphalt part of it in front of, you know what I'm talking about, from, on 121. The cracks have never been sealed, and so the weeds are so bad. I'm like, no one could rollerblade on that if they wanted to. It's just,
There is a maintenance plan on trails, and that just hasn't hit.
that, is that considered
Yeah.
trail or sidewalk?
So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of over the years, you know, I can't speak for a lot of the years, I guess, but cities will often fix as they can, but they have put a lot of those future needs and identified improvements or, you know, maintenance within the capital improvement plan. It should be really treated the same as roads. So it should be identified within that capital plan, and then, you know, with a timeline on when that should be replaced or enhanced. We're going through that, yeah, right now. I mean, there's numerous ones in the community, but like Kleinfelter, right? And, you know,
That's being taken care of, and
Yep.
that's 1993, 94 era, when that was first put in.
yeah.
But there is a plan. I mean, our public works director does have a maintenance plan depending upon what condition, money.
And the APO actually did really a great service a few years back. They hired a firm that actually went out and went to all the trails and sidewalks in the community and actually identified the current condition of those trails and sidewalks, and then shared that with all the cities. And it's literally every trail and sidewalk. They put a camera on a bike, and someone was out on a bike biking all the routes in the communities. So that was also helped us with our capital improvement plan as well.
So Nate, you said you were looking for input on two or three projects to prioritize. Do you need them ranked 1, 2, and 3 in order?
So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is Northland Drive, that connection, 1, Baker Street 2, and then the East Park connection along the county road as 3. So that's all I need. Really, what we'll do is try to go for a grant this year, and then we come back next year and just, hey, these are what the priorities were last year. Are they still the priorities? So, you know, that'd be the plan.
I'd move to have that sent forward to appropriate committees and discussions with other groups.
I second that.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And then we have the cannabis and zoning on the new business.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, the Minnesota legislation has enacted, as of July 1st, a new law that regards the selling of THC products within the state. The legislation came as a surprise to a lot of folks, I think, even the ones that passed it in the legislature. So this area cities have, most of them, enacted a moratorium for up to a year just to kind of study it more in depth, understand how the community should and the city should license products that contain THC, how the selling of it should occur, what regulations should be put in place. The council did talk about this at their last meeting, and also saw a drafted ordinance that pertained to the licensing and selling of THC in the community. So I did print off, in front of everyone should be a sheet that kind of just highlights a couple relevant tidbits from that drafted language. One of those tidbits talks about the proximity to a youth-oriented facility. So as it's drafted now, any establishment cannot operate within 1,000 feet of a youth-oriented facility. And youth-oriented facility really means schools, colleges, libraries, playgrounds, recreation, anything where youth may congregate. So that 1,000 foot is actually measured from any part of the property line going directly outwards. So, for example, if you flip on the other side of that sheet, there's a map that highlights a radius. So this is 1,000-foot radius and buffer. And this is actually measured from the Catholic school right on Minnesota and College. So if we use that as an example, that 1,000 feet basically puts out the whole downtown. So, and that's just one example of many other examples in the community that would be considered a youth-oriented facility. The other,
That
question.
1,000 feet, is that coming from the state, or is that language that the city has started looking at, or League of
So-
Minnesota, or where is that from?
Yeah, so that's language that the city is looking at. I think St. Cloud had something similar. A lot of the area cities are kind of following St. Cloud's lead, and they actually have a public hearing set for tomorrow for some of their ordinances. And the other tidbit is proximity to other establishments that sell THC type of products. And then that is a 2,000-foot buffer. So then that essentially kind of ensures that you don't have a cluster of the same use in one area per se. So what we're kind of looking for this evening from the Planning Commission is, in terms of zoning, what would be an appropriate zone for products that contain THC. Looking at what's drafted out there right now, again, not a lot of communities have adopted language in a formal sense for these quite yet. Again, I think all the cities are still under moratorium, with the exception of St. Cloud going forth with some public hearing. But the zoning that I've seen, it mostly, the communities limit them. They don't allow them in downtown areas. The two most common areas that they do allow are in your highway commercial zone district, and then in what's called another commercial district, like a shopping center, or like if you think about Division Street, like shopping areas, malls, things like that, strip malls. So those are the two main commercial areas that I've seen, and those are really the only areas I've seen where cities are drafting language to allow. So within our ordinance, I think the zoning, if we were to have a zoning district to permit this, would likely be your highway commercial zone district. Again, that's with the caveat that the language that we have tied to the youth-oriented facilities, 2,000 feet within another establishment. So looking for input and questions or recommendation from the commission on this.
How much of the highway commercial is any of the highway commercial impacted by that 1,000-foot, when you look at like college-owned property? Because because the college kind of falls under, that's probably kind of a gray area whether that's a youth-oriented facility or not, but I would say that it is, because the bulk of your students are under 21. And then I know we have St. Joan of Arc Academy, I believe, has property down 133 up that way too. Do either of those impact any?
Yeah, yep. So Millstream Park, for instance, that would definitely impact, some of these properties, probably mostly to the west of the intersection here.
Okay.
Even our park here, the ball fields, that's gonna catch a good amount. So you're likely looking at, further down to the east here, as potential areas. But a lot of these don't have, like our strip malls and things like that are over in this area, versus further going east. So there are a few along the route, definitely. We haven't looked at every single one and what that would do, but I would say, a decent amount would be probably eliminated with that radius. Yeah.
I would be curious to know various businesses within the community that fall within the youth-oriented facility definition, because like the Lake Wobegon trailhead, or like the apartments on Cedar Street, Or would like Snap Fitness be considered youth-oriented if they're allowed to be in that type of business? Because if you just go through process of elimination around the community, I don't know that much would be left.
When you say youth-oriented business, but then you say any place where youth would congregate, those are two very different things to me. Because one, you're saying that the bulk of their business is aimed at youth, and the other is saying if any part of their business would happen to include a gathering of youth, then it would qualify.
So the way that administration had drafted it is where 25% or more are regularly under the age of 21. Now, how you go out and actually ensure, that's the challenge, right? And that's, I think, what part of what we also have to work through on some of these definitions is, how can we determine that for every facility? How would we determine that for every facility?
Well, and facilities change
Correct, yeah.
as well.
Yep.
You know, why reinvent the wheel? I believe if you go back to the adult entertainment ordinance, I think that does the trick right there, if you use the language on that. I don't know, I don't have it in front of me, but
It's
I
a
don't know.
decent point,
That is,
because
Yeah, 'cause we
the motive is the same.
Yeah, if you're targeting, basically, you're saying we don't want it around the 21 and younger, you are kind of right there saying it's adult-oriented.
And the adult entertainment zoning kind of reflects the thought, I hope, of what we try to do. Better than trying to second guess where and whatever. You know, unless there's somebody on this board that's all for, you know, this. I mean,
So I've seen, yeah.
There's different opinions on this too.
So I've seen other cities where they eliminate a lot of the other fluff language in that definition, where they just are straightforward and they say schools, college, libraries, parks, and then they leave it at that.
That's how the adult entertainment zoning goes. If you can bring up the language or research the language, I think that covers that. Most of this would be allowed in the industrial park, and that's it.
is there a is
Yeah.
there a distance then tied to that?
Yeah,
What's the distance on?
off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
I guess I'd be curious to see what that language looks like in
Yeah.
comparison to what's proposed here.
I don't know if you've seen it or even looked at it, but I would research that and see if that makes more sense in what we're trying to do here, unless there's a different opinion.
I mean, I don't know, have other community, I mean, you just mentioned that the general trend has been to kind of follow what St. Cloud is doing and kind of going down that route. Is there any interest in the city's part in just saying we're not gonna allow it? I mean,
It's up to-
I
yeah,
guess
that's
I
up-
don't,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's gonna happen, I don't think that's,
There's a legal issue on that, you can't totally not allow.
but you could put it in your, you could put it in your ordinances in a way that it's basically
You
excluded.
can put it out in the outhouse in the back 40,
Yeah, yeah,
as long as you know.
as long as you have power
some
and,
place to put it.
yeah, no, yeah.
And I think
Okay.
there's two different types of usages too, in the sense that you could have an establishment that sells some THC products, right? And then you could have an establishment that's all they sell.
Yep.
And those two uses could look very different in operations and whatever, so.
On marketing and clientele.
Correct.
and
But if you
those.
put the zoning in an area and control it that way, it eliminates the rest of the possibilities.
Yep. Well, and I think that's probably what the radius kind of tries to
Right,
do
would
and
be a
that kind of
cleaner-
stuff.
A cleaner approach than to try to accommodate or not accommodate, or, depending upon what unanswered questions that you're gonna have, no matter what.
Does the adult entertainment language, do any of you happen to know if that is allocated towards a specific zoning district? like
Yes, it
the-
is.
Like the
Yes, it-
highway?
It's not on the
Business.
highway, it has, there is,
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't even know if we have specific language in our ordinance that states adult oriented. Are you referencing more or less the state guidance on?
all the local.
Okay,
We had to establish that years ago,
okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into that more,
yeah.
yeah. Gotcha.
At this time, what guidance were we supposed to provide for the city council on this?
Just thoughts and input for what could be a appropriate zoning district. Again, from a staff perspective, we really only see the highway district as a potential. You know, industrial, we don't want retail out in the industrial park. Downtown, we have concerns on that. So it really just leaves the B2 highway commercial district. But some of that is gonna come down to also how we define that youth-oriented facility, you know, and what that buffer kind of looks like. But from a staff perspective, that's the zoning that would, I think, make the most sense.
I don't have any qualms of just allowing it in an industrial area.
Well, industrial, we wouldn't wanna put commercial in the industrial.
Mhm.
Retail.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
So I think if there is a district where it would be allowed, I think you're right, I think it makes sense to be that B2.
Mhm.
You could say it's allowed in the B1, but I think if your radius type stuff is gonna probably eliminate all your B1 anyways, and future B1.
Yeah, correct.
So I think you're better off looking at just allowing it in the B2 Highway 75.
I disagree. That's gonna create all kinds of different problems.
I believe we need to define the language better before we can decide on the zoning. Right now, we have not disagreements, but we have different ideas as to what the language should be for this. And until we have that more appropriately defined and hammered down, where we're in agreement with that, would it be best to move forward on zoning?
Yeah, and we're not looking to move forward quite yet. So yeah, the administration's gonna work on the continuation of drafting these license regulations and how they're defining, these youth-oriented facilities. We can kind of come back and put together more what buffers would look like, what these radiuses would look like, and then that would give paint a better picture for the commission on what spots even within the B2 that could possibly work. Yeah, or be
And
options.
I would, one of your other questions that you had in the packet was, would the use be classified as a separate category or grouped with general retail uses? I'm assuming other cities are not grouping it with general retail?
Correct. Most that I've seen, that is correct. Yeah. I guess it goes back to that other comment I had said earlier where you could have an establishment that's considered retail, but they offer these products as one of their products versus just offering these products. So in that case, like St. Cloud, they come up with a completely different use for the ones that just offer these products, and then what zoning that makes sense in. And that's kind of, I guess, more or less what I'm getting to is if the use is just these products too, especially, that looks differently than your general
So
retail.
if the existing retail facility like downtown would add this, they were basically saying they couldn't add it either as a product or an additional product to sell without, well, they just couldn't, right, within those areas, so.
As of now,
That's the way
since
it
we don't
stands.
have anything adopted, no, they
So your
won't. But
so your chiropractor couldn't start offering it as a
That's
retail?
Yeah.
yep, it will come down to how we insert it in the zoning likely, and then where we allow it, whether it's any type of selling of that product or if they're just focusing on that product only. So it's probably gonna come down to some wordsmithing language that,
It would be a hard thing to control even now, if somebody wanted to add it to an existing retail.
Yeah, I mean, how are you
It would
gonna-
be a hard
Correct.
thing to monitor
And
even,
you're gonna have to
you
pick
know,
and choose.
yeah.
at this point, if somebody wanted to add it.
Yeah,
Correct. So,
Yeah.
and how we would catch that is during the licensing process. So if they had to get a license to sell those products, then that's when we would flag it, and then we would determine, yes, you're in the right zone, or no, you're not. So that's how we would kind of catch those.
Cause it's a separate license just for the THC products?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So that's what the drafted language is hoping to accomplish with that. Yeah, similar to just your tobacco license, liquor license. Yeah, same kind of a process. And
so do you foresee a separate license for a establishment just selling do you see separate licensing procedures for a facility that's only selling THC versus those that are selling in addition to?
That's a great question, and
Because I
I'm-
would think that you need to.
yeah. So, and I can't recall everything that they
Of
had.
course,
in-
if you're selling primarily that and you start selling other stuff, then how does that affect it?
Mhm.
I,
Yeah, great question.
you start talking in
Yep.
circles on this stuff.
Yep. I mean, I kind of have some guidance in that, and we'll come back with more as this, language continues and council takes a look at some of the licensing stuff. Other wordsmithing happens with that. We'll come back with some more stuff as well, so.
So I take it from this that we're kind of talking about, let's look at some of the language from the adult use. Let's look at getting a better definition of youth facility and that kind of stuff. A better picture of what some of these radiuses look like or eliminated parcels. I think we're kind of seeing it as a separate use with its own licensing to a certain degree at least. And then I guess my opinion is that, well, maybe it's not. And then whether or not it's an only THC versus a THC and other stuff facility, I think that's probably still up for determination too. Does
I know
anybody-
I've already had people come up to me asking me about this as soon as it popped out through the
Okay.
legislation. And people that I wouldn't even think would push for it, like, at this point in time, I mean, it's like a liquor store. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way around it.
Yeah.
It's here.
Yep.
I mean, do we really need to treat it like that, put that huge stigma on it? I mean, it's,
At the same time, I still can't buy beer at the grocery store, so,
you can buy 3 too.
yeah, well, that doesn't count.
And we're the only state that does that.
So, yeah, no, I guess I kind of go back and forth on whether whether I think it should be a,
Like, do we want it in Quick Trip? Do we want just like liquor store
right,
areas?
I mean, so I think there's definitely some more information that needs to be looked at and brought forward.
Sounds good.
At the council level, we only looked at a draft ordinance for probably 5 minutes. And basically St. Cloud kind of jumped out of the chute first with their concept of what a draft ordinance is. So we looked at it vaguely, kind of threw around a few deals.
So
And,
are we just kind of pigtailing and kind of viewing what they're doing, or are we making like an active effort to kind of reach out to the cities and kind of work together to?
Yep. So
Right.
yeah, so we're all working kind of in coordination. St. Cloud as the regional city is the lead. So they've drafted a lot of the language with the other cities kind of following behind. So that way we're also staying consistent in our region on how we're approaching it and regulating it.
all
So-
cities are adding input.
Yeah. Yep. And
And whoever puts it together and, whether or not we go solo on our ordinance or if we go to a area-wide consistent ordinance.
And again, we'll know more too now that St. Cloud's gonna have their public hearing. Again, I believe it's tomorrow. There'll be some comments and things that
Yep.
come up as part of that as well that
And
I think we'll learn from.
I think take that feedback into account as well as we're preparing more information.
Yep. Yeah.
Definitely. All right, with that, are we moving on to other business? Is there any other business?
I do not have any.
With that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Meeting is adjourned.